In the investigation into the insurrection on Capitol Hill, my colleague Joe Scarborough this morning raising the million-dollar question. Why are Republicans so afraid to hold the former president accountable for the incitement of that insurrection? Joe rightly pointing out the magnitude of the threat from those who want to dismantle our government. It's a threat addressed today by the Department of Homeland Security when it issued a federal bulletin over the increased threat of ideologically motivated violent extremists, possibly mobilizing to incite or commit violence in the wake of Joe Biden's inauguration. It's a warning that makes Republican inaction even more frightening. The Washington Post adds to our understanding of who is facing the most serious charges from their conduct on January 6th. Quote, in charging papers, prosecutors have already identified a dozen members of or affiliates of militant right-wing groups, including the nativist Proud Boys and the anti-government Oath Keepers and Three Percenters, the latter two of which recruit heavily among former military and law enforcement personnel. It's nearing the point of political irrelevance and becoming more of a national security crisis that sizable majorities of Republicans do not want to hold Donald Trump accountable for inciting the insurrection. Only 5 Republican senators voted yesterday to even move ahead with the impeachment trial. And the rest of their party's subservience to Trump is moving into even more uncomfortable territory. Do they have the ability or even the will to stop that threat described today, that threat posed by anti-government extremists who feel emboldened by the former president's words? The threat were from a foreign terrorist, as Joe Scarborough said. These very same members would be railing against any public official who refused to name the threat and project strength. They'd have zero tolerance for that. But that is exactly what today's Republican Party stands for in the face of an unprecedented domestic terror threat. Here's more evidence of the direct line between Trump's incitement and the violence carried out against the Capitol and against Mike Pence as its primary target.
And Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I will tell you right now.
I am very concerned about Mike Pence. I have no idea what he's going to do. Did not love the way the president talked about that.
The investigation is also focused on a group name-checked by Donald Trump a few months ago when he told them to, quote, stand back and stand by. From the New York Times, quote, the leadership of the Proud Boys has come under increased scrutiny as agents and prosecutors across the country try to determine how closely members of the far-right nationalist group communicated during the riot at the Capitol this month, and to what extent they might have planned the assault in advance. That's according to federal law enforcement officials. At least 6 members of the organization have been charged in connection with the riot, including one of its top-ranking leaders, Joseph Biggs. Mr. Biggs is a U.S. Army veteran who led about 100 men on an angry march from the site of President Trump's speech toward and then into the Capitol building. The Wall Street Journal has also published some extraordinary video on this topic. Watch.
Since the riot, Proud Boys leadership has tried to downplay their role. But the Journal's investigation shows that at every key breach of the Capitol's defenses, the Proud Boys and members of their contingent are at the forefront of the mob and can be seen coordinating and instigating.
The question today is, what are Republicans going to do about the clear and present danger that remains today from their supporters, from the Proud Boys and other Trump backers who feel emboldened by their inaction and Republican sensitivity to even questioning whether or not they're going to hold the insurrectionists accountable? That is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Katie Benner's here, New York Times Justice Department reporter. Also joining us, Olivia Choi, former senior aide to former Vice President Mike Pence on the Trump White House Coronavirus Task Force. She's now the director of the Republican Accountability Project. And Pete Strzok's, former FBI counterintelligence agent and author of the book Compromise. Pete, I want to start with you and this bulletin about not an imminent or specific threat, but a window that is to last at least through the end of April of a heightened threat of political violence from domestic violent extremists.
That's right. And I think this is a few months late. It was a long time coming, and frankly, it should have come out well before the election, let alone the inauguration. But what it serves to do, this not only puts the issue on the public's radar, but it also serves to focus the attention of federal law enforcement, of state and local law enforcement, so that everybody kind of raises their attention and start to understand what the nature of the threat is and what to pay attention to. And it's necessary, frankly, because part of this, as you indicated in your remarks, are bringing an awareness to the fact that this is not acceptable behavior, that this is an anomaly, that this is illegal activity, and it isn't a partisan issue. It's an illegal issue, and it's one that all America needs to stop.
You know, Olivia, you have unique insights in your former roles in government, but I imagine you also have some personal reactions to hearing a crowd of Trump supporters chant, "Hang Mike Pence." Do you think in the eyes of anyone you used to work with, this got out of control, or was this what Trump envisioned all along?
I think there's a certain group of people who believe that this has gone out of control and this has gone on for way too long. But then there's the other side of the coin, right, where there are a whole group of people who are still standing by this president, regardless of the fact that he incited this insurrection and was basically calling for the assassination of the vice president. I mean, we're watching this play out before our very eyes across Republican leadership and all of those people serving in Congress right now who still, even today, won't take a stand.
You know, Katie Benner, we covered your story Monday and Tuesday, your extraordinary piece of investigative journalism about the attempt at the Justice Department by Donald Trump to reach deep into the department and overthrow the acting attorney general there. And it seems like your reporting puts the nail in the coffin as to any notion that this wasn't the plan all along. Donald Trump planned, even before he lost, to overturn the elections if he was close enough. And I wonder what you make of the fact that this alert today has in it the reason that we are facing this threat from these extremists is Trump's role, or they don't name him, but this false narrative about the election result.
Sure. I think what we saw with what happened at the Justice Department, what has happened at the Justice Department over time, and then with this latest bulletin, is we're seeing now the real impact of politicizing national security and politicizing law enforcement. We talked about it for 4 years. There was a lot of debate about whether or not it would really impact the country if a new president could bring in a new team and reestablish old norms. I think we're seeing it's not as simple as that there was a real impact. We said that the president broke norms for 4 years. I think what we're seeing now is, in fact, he established